Learning to dom.
Yeah.
That's actually what Celia's books are about.
Welcome to Book, a podcast about banned and controversial children's books. I'm Adriana.
And I'm Maria.
And in this episode, we explore the life of Elena Fortún, a Spanish children's book writer whose books were considered a bad example for young women by Franco's fascist dictatorship.
Today, I have something that I'm going to need your help with.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of Spanish. And I realize that this is Spanish.
Yes. Apologies to the Spanish people.
We do our best.
Who will hear my superior accent saying the word.
You say it. I want to talk to you about Elena Fortún.
Yeah.
How would you say that in Spanish, actually?
Elena Fortún.
Fortún.
Yeah.
You see?
It's Fortun.
Yes.
Yeah,
with
Fortún.
like a, yeah.
Yeah, Fortún.
Fortún. Elena Fortún. Do you know her?
Yes, she's my best friend. I don't know who she is.
I thought I was your best friend.
It's actually Elena.
She is the pen name of
María de la Encarnación Gertrudis Jacoba Aragoneses y de Urquijo.
I was like, I think I can handle Elena Fortún, but I saw that name and I was like, no, I'm out of my depth. But yeah, that is her actual name. She wrote the extremely popular Celia books. This is a series of books about a protagonist named Celia. These were written primarily between the 30s and 40s, 1930s, 1940s, in Spain. And this is a fascinating story. I am very excited to share it with you. This series of books follows Celia. The first one, Celia is 7 years old. She and her family live in Madrid. And then, kind of like the Harry Potter books, as the books come out, Celia gets older.
Okay.
And so people were like, oh, what's Celia up to? Originally, the
That's cute.
yeah, right? Like, the individual chapters were published like first as short stories, and then they were sort of collected into these little books. So when Celia was first published, the first book came out in 1929, but again, like mostly like the 30s was like Celia at her height. This was a progressive time for Spain. It was a good time. The king had been deposed in 1931. Like, as of 1931, Spain was a democracy.
Nice.
And children's literature was seen as a way to obviously like educate the general public, but also to sell books and improve the economy. So the government was like, yeah, like, let's invest in children's books.
Nice.
Let's start more publishing companies. It was like a really good time. At the same time, women were getting more rights. People were talking about women being educated as well, also to like, just improve Spain. And so even though like really educated women were still considered kind of rarities, this was like new discourse that was kind of like picking up around that time. Elena herself, I will call her Elena because we're friends.
Yeah.
She was a feminist. She taught storytelling at Spain's first women's college called the Residence for Young Ladies.
She's so cool.
She's really cool. She struggled with sort of balancing her writing career, her ambitions, with being a mother and a wife. She did not enjoy being a mother and wife particularly much. At the end of her life, she wrote that if she could do it all again, she wouldn't have bothered with the nonsense of getting married.
Wow.
She actually had to start writing in secret because her husband was already a writer, and he didn't like when she became more successful than he was.
Elena, they never do.
Yeah. Elena Fortún was actually the name of a character in one of his plays, I think. He's a playwright.
That's so
Isn't that?
iconic.
Yeah.
She's iconic.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
I would love to do something like that where I'm like, "Ugh, I'm just gonna steal your character."
Yeah, and make it famous.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
be better at being your character.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she also joined the Feminine Lyceum Club in Madrid, which was, it's kind of hard to explain now, I guess, but it was a progressive social club for women. So it was where women who like believed in all these progressive ideals went to hang out with other women.
Smoke cigars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Drink
Amazing.
whiskey
So,
on the rocks.
yeah.
Or maybe not.
You're painting a picture.
Yeah.
So that's probably what gave her the encouragement to actually write her stories. It's like she met other female writers there, and she's like, "Oh, I can do that." At the same time, a new publishing company, which again was like spurred on by the government wanting to create more children's books, found her stories in the magazines and was like, "Hey, girl, you up to being a published author?" And so they published the first Celia book, and the rest is history. They were enormous critical successes, financial successes.
That's so cool for
Like,
her.
yeah, like the environment was absolutely perfect for her. Everything was going great. Um,
Glad I claimed her as my best friend.
yeah, you could do a lot worse. So a lot of Elena's real life is reflected in her books. So the fictional Celia, her mother, is a member of the Lyceum, where people smoke cigars and drink whiskey on the rocks. And she, it's so funny because like this mother character has a real life outside of her child, which
Yeah.
was and still is kind of novel.
Yeah.
Like she's literally like, I can't look after you right now. I have to go hang out with my friends. Elena IRL is very much like the mother is kind of the self-insert for
Yeah.
her. Yeah. The books are very like not moralizing. They're not
Okay.
like, this is what you've learned. The kinds of lessons that they teach are more through Celia questioning everything and being really like sarcastic and funny and being like, like grown-ups hate it when children answer back. Like grown-ups really hate it when children think, huh? She's a great role model for like, you know, the new sort of progressive child,
Yeah.
especially girls.
Very me-coded.
In 1936, the
Yeah.
Spanish Civil War started. That lasted until 1939. And this was Franco's far-right party, the Phalange. I'm saying it in a French accent for some reason, versus the Republicans. And to be clear, the Republicans, and unlike today, were like pro-democracy. Elena's husband was a Republican. So once Franco's dictatorship took over, Spain had a lot of problems, but they also had like additional problems because they were basically on the losing side of the Civil War.
Okay.
Franco's party, there was a branch called the Women's Section, which was basically like a reaction to all the progressive changes that had happened during the democracy. This was a very Catholic concept of traditional womanhood. And it was like women are future wives or like current wives. Like girls need to learn obedience and submission to men.
Oh.
And everything has to be about that. Otherwise, it's like dangerous and forbidden. A detail I found really awful was that they took over the Lyceum, where people smoked cigars
And drank whiskey.
and drank whiskey, and that was the headquarters of their like anti-woman like censorship
So
brigade.
it was the women's club before, and they
Yeah.
took it over to be like, oh, we hate women.
Yeah, yeah. It became the headquarters of the women's.
You know what it is? It's the tree house that says no boys allowed, and then the boys take over
Yeah.
and like take away your ladder so that they can make you feel bad.
Yeah. It's just gross.
Mhm.
Can I read you a section from a textbook that Franco's regime released? Because it's terrifying.
Okay.
He who obeys is rejoicing and giving pleasure to the superior, and the satisfaction of pleasing another is a way of loving him. It's easier to obey than to command. The one who obeys is not wrong. The one in charge can be wrong. Whoever gives an order has to think whether it is possible to fulfill. Instead, he is free from such concern that he obeys. I'm sorry, okay, that also sounds like smut. But you know what else? Okay, this is unrelated. But you know, in Harry Potter, when Harry gets the spell that controls his mind,
Yes.
and he just like goes into subspace. I was thinking
But
about
he
that.
refuses to.
He
Harry's a
does.
dom. It reads very religious, like
Yeah.
very like obey your father. Well, not
Yeah.
your father, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. So
Very awkward.
it is very awkward. But like I've seen trad wife content like this, you know? It's not
He
like
who obeys. I would like to read it in Spanish and tell you if it has the same vibes.
oh god.
What if the translation is just someone who's like really kinky and like the translator was like,
I
obey,
think that would be an improvement.
be so happy,
Yeah.
be a
Honestly.
sub. Being a dom is so hard. It's
Yeah.
so difficult to think of what to tell people to do.
So yeah, Elena Fortún,
Fortune.
Fortún,
Yeah.
um, was this Republican affiliated woman,
Okay.
like a very clear feminist, writing books in which this girl was like asking questions,
Oof.
not in a good position. Her publisher actually got some like little questions from the government,
Oh.
and uh just being like, hey, like what are her allegiances, like this I think is fairly typical of
She
like
had
fascist
Tom
regimes.
or a sub.
But yeah, no, and he wrote back, he was like, no, she loves fascism, I swear. He was like, Elena and her husband fled to Argentina
Oh, okay.
in
Far away.
yeah, in 1939. The whole women's club, in case you were wondering,
They were
they're
roommates.
scattered. They were roommates. Well, we'll come back to that. But yeah, however, she was, I don't know why. I suspect it's because she was a combination of really popular and writing for children, which does, as we've seen, like give people some kind of like a pass sometimes when people are like, oh no, what, like stop reading into my books, they're about literally nothing. Like she was actually allowed to keep publishing.
Oh,
Kind of.
nice.
Yeah. However, what she was allowed to publish was really interesting. So Celia's life got dark
Okay.
once Franco took over. In
Celia Madrecita.
yes, or Celia Little Mother, she gives up her dream of being a writer. So her mother has died giving birth. Like Elena like straight up killed her own self-insert.
Okay.
And Celia now takes responsibility for raising her sisters. Her father is like, don't you dare do anything else. You have to stay home and do this.
Of
He's like
course.
become this authoritarian figure, whereas previously he had encouraged her to be a writer.
Oh,
This was very unpopular with the fans.
of course.
But like some critics have been like, no, she's like making fun of the romance novels where like a man saves the helpless woman, and she's saying that like no man will ever save you.
Not even your father.
Yeah. I like I think it's pretty obvious though that like Elena was not comfortable writing the kinds of stories that the Franco regime allowed to get published. So there was like some discomfort there, and she wasn't at her best. So like Celia's tragic life continued in 1944.
Celia, institutriz en América.
Celia, teacher in America. She teaches poor children in Argentina. Fortun's next book was a weird one. So Celia basically went back in time. She was 9 years old again. Okay. This is like a real departure. And
I love this for her. I love how she just wrote whatever she wanted.
Yeah, she was trying. She was determined to write.
Yeah. She's just like, and now C.S. Lewis, she was doing it. She was like, and Santa Claus came to town. Ha ha ha. We have this discussion often because we are fans of the fact that Tolkien and Lewis were friends.
Yeah, and Tolkien was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, Tolkien hated C.S. Lewis's books, Narnia, because they were just insane. And Lewis would just be like, yes, and now a wolf jumped over the moon. And Tolkien would be like, no, you can't just do that.
Right.
You have to have reasons. And we just talk about it all the time.
I do. C.S. Lewis was like, anything is fine as long as children don't have agency. So anyway, yeah, so Celia, 9 years old, has like a philosophical conversation with a nun about like being submissive.
Being a sub.
Yeah, Elena was like, here, is this what you want?
Do you want her to be a sub?
Yeah.
She has to learn
how
to be a sub.
So yeah, like her books were like the history is very murky, but they were like banned for like short amounts of time and then like re-released with edits, or like there were like these weird like age gates. Yeah. In 1945 there was an organization of women, the Women's Superior Council of Catholic Action. And stop me when this sounds familiar. They worked with the government and they judged books based on whether they were appropriate for children. So and then they published book lists, like judging these books.
Where have I heard this before? It involved a picnic of some sort.
So yeah, so they basically said that
Celia en el colegio
and Celia teaches in America were allowed, but they weren't appropriate for children under the age of 16.
Celia en el colegio means Celia at school. That I forgot to.
Yeah. Can you think why the Catholic Church in Spain might have been like primed to know how to ban books? Like they had the institutional knowledge to do this.
No.
It's because the Spanish Inquisition,
of course,
wrote these book lists in exactly the same way about like whether books were appropriate or not. And I think it's so interesting that like the right-wing groups in America today are being like, oh no, we're not banning books, we're just saying that they're not appropriate for like children under the age of 18. And it's like, yeah, that's how the Spanish Inquisition did it. These book lists, these like, oh no, it's not appropriate for you. Like we're concerned. Like that is a standard method of banning books. And like, I think it's important to say that like that is the bad thing, even if her books aren't being like burned in the public square. Like this is what it is. This is what it looks like. So anyway, I found that was really
also, if the character is 7 when the book first starts, like when the series starts, I don't think as a 16-year-old you will want to start reading it. You'll be like, oh, I really want to read a book about a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Back to Celia at school. The reason that didn't appeal to the Franco regime was it was about Celia struggling through Catholic school, where the nuns were disciplining her and telling her not to ask questions and just shut up.
Of course.
That did not go over well
Of course.
with the Catholics. There was a censorship report released in 1956 saying that this book was anti-pedagogical by continuous disobedience and disrespect.
Of course.
Yes, and it put the discipline of girls at risk. In 1948, Elena returned to Spain because she wanted to negotiate the possibility of amnesty for her husband. I don't know why. He has never helped her in his life.
Maybe
Free
she
yourself.
wanted to send him back and then move away.
Oh yeah,
again.
maybe.
She was
She's
like,
yeah.
what if he moves back to Spain
Mhm.
and then I go back to Argentina?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a long game. I can respect that.
Yeah.
She had actually written like more books in Argentina that she was too afraid even to like travel with.
Oh.
She was like,
What was she writing?
more on that later. But like she was like, husband, don't travel with this. Like she mentioned them in letters by being like somebody was gonna go over there and help her like move her stuff, and she was like, you will know what not to bring.
Yeah.
Like those will not pass the censors. Like don't.
Okay, don't even try.
Yeah, don't even try. She says it will be easy to recognize them.
She just painted, she drew naked ladies on the pages.
Cigars.
Whiskey.
And there's like this random like side quest. So she visited the Lyceum, the Whiskey and Cigars, which apparently, so the actual building was still being occupied, but the women had like gathered again and they were reading in secret. And I want to know more about that. Yeah, they were like it was literally like a secret clandestine
Okay.
thing. Anyway, so she said hi to them.
An orgy.
Oh.
Where you read.
A few months later, her husband, I'm sorry to be very negative, but he's not very helpful. He was still in Buenos Aires and he unalived himself. She then went to America to live with one of her sons. I think her only surviving son at that point. And then she returned to Madrid in like the 50s, I think, and then she died there.
Aw, okay.
So she did actually, so one of the books that she wrote in Argentina was Celia in the Revolution.
Oh.
And that was only rediscovered and published in the 80s. And that is like Celia like struggling with war.
Oh.
It's not like super positive towards Franco.
I wonder why.
Yeah. So but it's mostly like really kind of nihilistic. Like at the end she's meant to join her father, who is a Republican, and like she's basically like alone wandering the city looking for him, I believe.
That's so sad.
Yeah. Her legacy, Elena's legacy, was like thriving. The children who had grown up with the Celia books were starting to write their own books. And they were all like, not to turn everything into a Harry Potter reference, but like it's kind of like what people expected Harry Potter to be, and it never was because well. But so in 1944, Carmen Laforet wrote Nada, which
I've actually read that.
oh yeah?
Yeah.
Did you like it? It's very like it is a like critique of society through the eyes of a teenage girl.
Yes.
And that is kind of like the kind of literature that Elena inspired.
Okay.
I guess. So but when Laforêt won a major literary prize for this novel, she wrote to Elena and asked to share the prize with her because she was like, you were such a huge influence on me. I couldn't have written this without you." And Elena was like, "Oh my God, thanks, yes." Like
Of
she was so
course.
happy. Yeah,
Of course.
yeah. So like again, like it's nice to have an author who was appreciated in life. Like kind of rare.
I just thought you were gonna say it's nice to have a friend, and I was like, okay, yes, valid, I agree.
By the 50s,
hmm
again, like when the writers who had grown up with her were like writing books of their own, yeah, again, like they modeled their books off of Celia. This concept of viewing like society through the eyes of a young girl. A critic in the 90s wrote that if you wanted to understand like the social realist mid-century novel, all you had to do was read Elena,
Oh,
which for a children's book author, I think is like a surprising amount of recognition.
yeah,
But yeah, he said all writers of the 50s enjoyed her in childhood. I think that's sweet.
that is sweet.
And that is the story of censorship and
That
Elena
was
Fortún, except final
Oh.
plot twist. They also discovered some other books of hers.
Ooh.
Her final book was found and published in 2016.
Okay.
This is considered a secret novel, like never intended for publication. It's called,
Oculto Sendero.
yes, Hidden Path, and it reveals that she was a lesbian the whole time!
I knew it!
So yeah, like it's so autobiographical, basically. And yeah, she had like a lover at the whiskey and cigar
I
place.
told
Yeah,
you.
and like part of why she was so sad she moved to Argentina was that she
Of
had to break up with
course.
her lover. It's so sad.
They didn't have to break up, but
No,
yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, again, husband, not helpful.
Why didn't maybe it's just me. I would have left Argentina sooner. Go back to Spain. To be
Yeah.
with my lover.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like an interesting thing that you can see with her is that like she really placed her career first.
Of course.
Like she was willing to work with the censors to some degree if it meant that she was able to continue writing.
Yeah, wow. Well, I called it from
You did.
the beginning.
You did.
I have a really good gaydar.
Wow, yeah, even like by proxy. Incredible. So today in Spain's
Parque del Oeste.
there is a monument to her. It is a stone triptych of a boy holding a book, a girl holding flowers, and in the middle, she is there over the words,
Los niños españoles a Elena Fortún.
which is roughly from the Spanish children to Elena Fortún.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a monument to one of Spain's first classic children's book authors who had an enormous influence on literature throughout the century, and I think has just one of the most incredible stories.
That's so cool. I kind of want to read her books now, even knowing that they become more unhinged as the series goes on. Yeah, thank you for telling us the story of Celia and all the weird craziness that her life was truly about.
And Elena,
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
you're welcome. It's been my pleasure. I will see you back here, wherever you are, wherever you listen to podcasts, in 2 weeks with another unhinged story. And
Excited.
thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye. Like and subscribe. Yeah, I read like excerpts from some of the early ones, and they are like hilarious.
Yeah.
Celia is like really funny. You can see why they were so popular among everyone.
And then they just become unhinged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Valid.
So, yeah,
Me.
same.
I'm so popular now, but wait a few years.